Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's office hours. Quite a long title here, Optimizing Grocery Delivery Routes Using Oracle Apex, Oracle Autonomous Database, and Google Maps APIs. This session is being recorded like all other Apex office hours. For those who are even new to Apex, don't even know what Apex is, the low-code application development framework from Oracle, you can go to apex.oracle.com and read to your heart's content about this. In today's session, if you have questions at any time, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A in the Zoom. So don't do the chat, but ask the question in the Q&A, and someone will respond to it. And a lot of the questions here as well for our special guest, Santhosh, I'm going to save until the end, okay? So just a few quick announcements, if I could, please. This was just launched yesterday, I believe. Upcoming on August 13th for the Americas and August 18th for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific is something called Oracle Developer Live. And this particular series is going to have focus on Oracle Database, and there will be hands-on labs, demonstrations, panels, and there's even going to be an Apex session and a 2-hour Apex hands-on lab on Autonomous Database. So for those who are new to Apex or Oracle Cloud or Oracle Autonomous Database, I encourage you to join us, and I included the QR code there. Also upcoming in August for Latin America, on August 17th, is an Apex track, which is part of the Oracle Groundbreakers Tour for Latin America. And even though this is over multiple days, the specific Apex track is on August 17th, and it will be a mixture of some Spanish sessions and some English, okay? For upcoming Apex office hours on August 20th is the top 12 new features in Apex 20.1 that everyone should know. And even though we already had a new features Apex 20.1 session, some of these will be repeated, but there will also be some features which are specific to Apex on Autonomous Database and Autonomous Data Warehouse. So I hope you join us for that. And by popular demand, we're going to have another joint session with Karsten Zarski and the Oracle Spatial Product Development Team on September 17th. And this will be for Oracle Apex and the map visualization component. We get lots of requests for that. The National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is part of the U.S. National Institutes of Health, they are launching a new clinical trials network, and they are hoping to enroll thousands of volunteers to participate in this network. And this begins by a U.S. citizen, volunteers and completes a survey. And this survey was recently done by this crack team in Oracle, and it was done in Apex on the Oracle Cloud. And this is additionally part of something which was donated by Oracle to the U.S. government. And speaking of this crack team at Oracle, there's a gentleman by the name of Scott Spendolini. If you're familiar with the Oracle Apex community, you're already familiar with him. He is a director inside Oracle, and he is hiring a team to build and deploy Apex solutions on Oracle Cloud for Oracle. So not only are there a number of solutions which Oracle is donating to the US government and to other countries, but you're going to see more and more solutions built by Oracle using Apex on Oracle Cloud. And we are in the process of hiring some of the best experts in the world to help us achieve this. Scott recently wrote a blog post announcing this hiring spree, us looking for the best and brightest. And even though I have as a title here, hiring Apex experts, Oracle's also looking for people with a DBA background, DevOps background, Oracle Cloud, infrastructure. And I included a QR code for Scott's announcement about this. So if you're interested and you think you're an Apex expert, please consider applying. And now we're going to get to our special guest here. So um, this is going to be a little bit different. Rather than just handing this off to our special guest, Santhosh Jose, I wish to introduce him a little bit to the Apex community, because we like to think that everybody kind of knows everybody. And Santhosh came from out of nowhere with all this Apex experience, and has actually used Apex for a number of years. And oddly enough, Santhosh is an Oracle employee. He doesn't work on the Apex team or the database division. He's just one of the many, I'll say thousands of people who use Apex internally at Oracle. And I just wanted to use this brief opportunity to get to know Santhosh a little bit and help introduce him to everybody else. So I know that's a long introduction, Santhosh, but could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background, and how you even got started in IT?
All right, absolutely. First of all, Joel, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you're in. So my name, as Joel already mentioned, is Santhosh Jose. I'm part of the Oracle HCM Cloud team, and I'm based in San Francisco, Bay Area, California right now. So what I do essentially is I build out features for the Oracle Cloud HCM suite of products at the moment. Yeah.
But where did you get started and even in IT? Not even think Oracle, right? Did you work
Right.
from Oracle straight out of college? How did you get started here?
Right. Sorry. Yeah. Good question. My background is actually in mechanical engineering. So in college, I did mechanical engineering, and the plan was probably to get into the renewable energy industry. But somehow things didn't really pan out well, and I ended up in the IT industry, and I got a job at Accenture, where I was doing Oracle implementations for Oracle's ERP suite of products. And ever since then, I've been part of the Oracle ecosystem in some way or the other. So starting at a partner site, I eventually got an opportunity to move to Oracle Consulting, and from there to Oracle Development, where I'm now.
And so you're an Oracle product development on the HCM team, and you were in consulting correct. In London, is that right?
That is correct. So when I was in Oracle Consulting, essentially the job involved us traveling to client sites and implementing Oracle's ERP solutions. So I was doing a project on a Fusion implementation at the time when it was still sort of a new product, right? It was an early adopter project. And because of that, I interacted a lot with the development team, and I had sort of good exposure with the product as well. And things turned out that there was an opportunity within Oracle development, and I took on that opportunity, and I'm here now.
Now, I have to ask you this because people, they probably are mystified by what I do on a daily basis, but what would you say is your day job at Oracle? What does your typical day look like?
All right, fair enough. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the Cloud HCM team. And for those who are not aware, Cloud HCM is built on Oracle ADF framework. So if you ask me what my day job is, I essentially use ADF and Oracle database to build out new features for the HCM suite of products, right? So we have releases coming once every quarter, and every release would have, let's say, about 10 to 20 new features that have been built based on customer requests. So my team is involved with the building and the testing and the rollout of these new features.
So this is great. So you use ADF and the Oracle database, and you build cloud software during the day. How did you get started with Apex? Where was your first introduction to this?
Right. It was sort of a serendipitous encounter, let's call it. So for those who don't know, Oracle uses Apex quite a bit internally. So even though, as Joel mentioned, I'm not part of the Apex team, our team has built a lot of internal tools on Apex. So tools such as reporting tools, or for managing a release management process, etc. So when I moved to Oracle development and I was, trying to get some information about one of our processes, I found this application that was built on Apex. There was a link on the top that said, about section. I clicked on that, and that said, okay, this application has been built using Apex. Click here to find out more. So I started this journey, going down the rabbit hole, as they say, and I landed on the front page of Oracle Apex site, where you get to create your own account. And I was kind of curious, and it didn't look like I would land into trouble by requesting for an account. So I just opened an account, just trying to figure out what it was. And I get an email. It says, okay, click here to start building applications, something like that. I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. So I click on that, and then I sign in, and this page opens up, and it says, it's this very big button which says start an application, or I don't know the exact wording, right? So I click on that, and then it says, okay, what do you want to name your application? So it was this whole sort of guided process where I was just like following whatever Apex was suggesting. And within about 5 minutes, at the end of it, this page opened up, and there was this huge button which said run application. So I clicked on that, and boom, there you go. Like, I had an actual working application running in 5 minutes. And that kind of blew my mind, without reading any documentation, without really anyone even telling me about what Apex or what the tool was. I could actually get an application running, hosted somewhere. So that was like, my first sort of experience with Apex. And from then on, it was really easy to sort of explore what other features this tool can do, and then really get drawn into that whole tool.
So what's interesting though is what you sent to me in email. You had actually looked at other low-code tools out there, right, outside of Oracle. Can you describe this a little bit, and how do you think Apex competed against these other solutions that you were not married to Apex at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I love Oracle, and I love working at Oracle. But then, when it comes to my own requirements for building apps, I like to see what's there in the market, right? So, in terms of low code, the first time that I even heard of the concept was through Apex, right? And the moment that I saw what Apex could do, and I heard about the concept of low code, I wanted to see what else was out there in the market. Who knows? Maybe there's something else that's much better. So I did spend, I would say, roughly about an year, sort of Googling, trying to look at Gartner Magic Quadrants and getting the name of all the other vendors and trying all of them out. And what I found was, I mean, for me personally, hands down, Apex is my go-to choice, right, after trying all of these. And if you ask me, what was good about the other platforms and what's great about Apex, it's well, to be honest, it's a long list. But then the first and the foremost thing is what I just mentioned, right? The first experience of using the application, wherein you just log in and there's this guided flow which within one or 2 minutes, you get to like a actual working application, right? That whole process, I could not really find it everywhere else, right? You've got drag and drop features, etc., but it lacked that sort of let's say introductory flow, which somebody could automatically flow without reading any documentation and get something running. So as in terms of where does Apex fit in, if it's got to be a web application that you're building, then for me, hands down, that would be Apex, right? Whereas if you're looking at a native mobile application, even though other platforms do provide the capability, what I think I've realized is I would prefer not a low-code platform for building a native mobile application, right? Because the experience is kind of different. And in terms of what kind of web applications I would use Apex for, I would have to say definitely, sort of internal applications for an enterprise. Absolutely, Apex would be my go-to. Or if I'm building, let's say, a B2B application, right? Again, Apex hands down. I would even consider it for if I want to build like a B2C application, right? Where end consumers want to use it, I feel Apex has the capability to do that. So the only thing I would not use for if Apex is if I'm building an application which is essentially like a glorified spreadsheet, right? If you want something very simple, which is like a table, then yeah, I probably would not use Apex. I would just use a spreadsheet.
Sure. Hey, our guests are getting restless. They want us to get to the action here. So thanks for this. So let's just give a little bit of background here. Okay. So
right.
the pandemic starts. You're in the Bay Area, right, in California.
Right. Yeah.
You're looking to help and get involved, and you can you describe the organization you reached out to assist and how you got in this initiative, please?
Absolutely. Right. So what happened was, I moved to the Bay Area just about a year ago, and around February, I finally managed to sort out my license and get a car. So I was excited to be doing road trips around California. Unfortunately, that was exactly the time when shelter in place was announced, right? So what I had essentially was a new car and nothing to do with it. So at that same time, because shelter in place was announced, there were a lot of these volunteer groups that were forming, which was looking for people who could drive around, delivering groceries to people who are in need or at risk. So I thought, well, that's a good use of my car. I was looking to drive, and possibly, I should sign up for all of these opportunities. And I ended up signing up for pretty much, I think, any volunteer organization that would let me sign up. And one of those organizations was very interesting. It's called Mercy Brown Bag. They're based in Alameda County in East Bay in California. So what they did essentially was they used to organize, somehow source groceries and distribute it to seniors. And before COVID struck, their operational model, how they worked was the seniors would come to their center and pick up a free grocery bag. But because shelter in place was announced, the seniors could obviously not do that trip to the center. So essentially, they wanted drivers to come there, pick up the groceries, and do delivery routes and deliver it to the seniors, right? So that's where I come in, and many other volunteers like me. Now, when I started doing that, how it would work is, they would give us a list of addresses. Like let's say there would be around 10 to 14 addresses in one route, and we would just go there, leave the groceries at the door, just let them know that we have done that, and then go on to the next address. In some of these routes, what I noticed was I was going back and forth in certain neighborhoods, meaning when I go from address 1 to 2 to 3, address 1 and 3 might have been close to each other. So I might have ended up, taking a longer route to do all those 3 deliveries. So I thought, one way I could sort of fix that would have been to open up Google Maps and then manually sort of adjust all the addresses and see, what makes sense. But I thought, what if there is an easier way to do this? So the first thing that I checked was I checked Google Maps platform to see if I can at least get data that they have, and which I could. Once I knew that I could get access to data, then I was confident, right? I mean, I had Oracle database on my disposal and also Oracle Apex to build an application. And so I went about building this very small application. It's very simple. I mean, I'll be showing it later. And how it works essentially is as soon as I get the list of addresses, I just type in the addresses, click on a button, and it'll pop up and give me the best route that I need to take so that I travel the shortest distance.
Okay, perfect. So I'll hand it over to you now. I'll give you a tip though. Even though you wanted to exclude Waze integration from the title, it would be great if you could briefly discuss that. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. No problem.
Outstanding. Right. All right. Thanks, Santhosh. I'll pass it over to you now, please.
Yeah. Let me just share my screen. All right. Joel, can you see my screen?
Looks perfect.
All right. Awesome. I'll just skip straight to the agenda and talk about what all we're going to be discussing today. At a high level, this is what we're going to be discussing. I'll start with the demonstration of the application, and then I'll walk through each of the individual components to just give you an idea of how it was built, right? So starting with the application, the domain name that I've registered is routebuilder.app, right? So if you hit that in your browser, it'll take you to this page. And I've put in some instructions, if you want to know how to use it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter in a few random addresses into the box. So let's start with some addresses in Oakland. So it found an address for me. I add it to my list. Let me add an address in San Francisco. And then I'll type in an address, let's say another address in Oakland. So a couple of things I want to point out straight away, right? As soon as this is an Apex page, right? And this is an input field in an Apex page. As soon as I'm typing in addresses, you can see I'm getting a list of suggestions, right? What this address could be. So I'll talk about how to build this. And the moment that I click on one of the addresses, on the right-hand side, I've got a interactive Google Maps, which tells you, which sort of displays what is the address that I've chosen, right? Again, another integration that I'll be talking about. So let me just quickly add this address as well. So here you can see it's a very short route. We've got 3 addresses. And if I wanted to optimize the route, all I would do is I'll just click on the optimize route button. And what the application has essentially done is the San Francisco address, which was second in the list, has been moved down, right? And obviously the 2 addresses that were in Oakland, they have been sequenced one next to each other. And after doing that, it also opens up a map which shows me the actual route that I'd be taking, okay? So this is sort of the key functionality of the RouteBuilder application. Now, the second part of the application is, okay, now that I've built the route, I need to give this route to somebody else, right? Like a driver who can use this. So the way that I've gone about it right now is to generate a route ID. So here you can see it's 155. So as a driver, you would essentially open the app in your mobile, and it would take you to a page that looks something like this. And if I click on, let's say, this address, it'll give me a couple of options. So if I had entered any contact details for the address, it would have displayed over here. Otherwise, if I click on the Waze icon, essentially what it would do is it will open up a Waze application in your phone with the address as a navigation, right? And right now, I've not connected my phone to show you that, but what I do have is a recording of what it looks like. So I'll just quickly show that. So here you can see the driver has opened up his mobile, and he's clicking on one of the addresses. And when he clicks on Waze, it automatically opens up the app, and it takes the address and starts the navigation straight away, right? And then you can exit and go back, and then click on next stop, and then do the same thing again. It'll feed the next address and start navigation again. Yeah. So at a high level, this is the app that I've built, and this is what I've been using for my deliveries, for doing my deliveries so far, right? So moving forward, let me walk through, what the architecture of the whole application is. So at a high level, I've divided it into 4 key processes. So the first step is obviously to capture the user input, which is where I'm entering the addresses into the application. Obviously, I used Apex to build the form. The second step is to source the geocoded data. And when I say geocoded data here, I'm talking about the distance between from one address to the other. So I'm getting that information from Google Maps platform. And also the interactive map that you saw, that also I'm getting it from Google Maps. And once I have the data, I'm processing it in Oracle DB to build the shortest route. And once I have the shortest route, again, Apex comes into the picture where I've built a classic report to display the results, and then open up Google Maps and Waze for navigation. So what I'll do is I'll walk through each of these key areas one by one, starting with Google Maps, sourcing the data, right? So like I said at the beginning, Google Maps, apart from building these wonderful consumer products, they also have a platform from where you can access the maps data through APIs. So for this particular application, I've made use of 3 of their APIs or functionalities. The first one is called autocomplete. So that is the functionality wherein if you have an HTML input field in your page, in your Apex page, you can start typing in an address and it'll give you address recommendations. Okay, now one cool thing about this functionality is you can actually build in some additional code into your Apex page by which you can sort of uh, restrict the suggestions that it gives to based on your location. So what I mean by that is right now I'm based in a city called Oakland. So whenever I start typing in addresses, Google first shows me addresses that are closest to where I am, my own location, right? So that's autocomplete. The second API that I used is called the distance matrix API. And what this does is if you send in a list of, let's say, 10 addresses, and you tell Google, okay, give me the distance between each combination of these addresses, this API would return that in the form of a JSON data set. Again, I obviously needed this to figure out which is the best route to take. And the last feature is a map that you could embed into your Oracle Apex application. Again, it is available in the form of an iframe, which you can plug it into your static content region in an Apex page. Now, in terms of how to actually use all of these APIs, what I've done is I have published a blog post. So what I'll do is I'll share the details of the blog post so that you can refer to it at your own convenience and give it a go. I'll just share the page quickly right here. So here I walk you through the steps of how to register a new API key on Google Maps platform, and then how to use Maps Embed API, right? So here in an Oracle Apex page, I've created a simple static region, and I'm putting in this very small section of code, and it gives me an embedded API. Similarly for autocomplete, which involves a little bit of JavaScript as well. It's very simple though. Yeah, again, using, I'm doing it in Apex and all the associated code. And finally, I've got an example of the distance matrix API as well with some example data. So what I would recommend is, after the session, if you're interested in this, go through this post, try it out in your own applications. And if you are facing any issues, absolutely feel free to reach out to me. And, it might be an issue that I've faced and somehow not mentioned it in the post. So I can always include it in the post. Yeah. So that was the first section, right? Sourcing the data. Now, the next part, which to me, this is the more exciting part, is how did I manage to find the shortest path, right? Now, at the starting, I mentioned I'm a mechanical engineer by education, so I did not even know of the concept of traveling salesman problem till somebody else told me about it when I showed them the application. So the traveling salesman problem, the problem statement is given a list of cities and distances between each pair of cities, what is the shortest possible route that visits each city and returns the origin city, right? I mean, it's given there. And this problem statement was exactly what I was faced with, right? I was given a list of addresses to which I need to deliver to, and I wanted to find the shortest route. So not knowing about any algorithms and not really knowing, sort of recursion functions and how to use them well, I just thought, let me try to start with SQL, right? SQL is simple, and I know how to use SQL. And I thought, okay, let me give it a go. So the same thing, I have explained the solution in detail on the blog post. I'll just quickly jump back here. If you go to algorithms, you've got traveling salesman problem. So what I've done is I've gone through the solution step by step, starting from a simple select star statement. And I've also provided a sample data set if you'd like to straight away start with solving the solution. What I want to focus on right now in this session is just to touch upon at a high level, how is it being solved, right? So what I'm using in the solution is hierarchical queries. So when you use hierarchical queries, you get access to this function called sysconnect by path. And as most of you might know, Connect by Path sort of what it does is it creates a list of or it generates a path of the hierarchy that you're traveling through, right? So what I've done is I've created a path or a hierarchy of all the addresses that I'm going through using a hierarchical query. And once I got that path, what I'm doing is sort of what I like to call as a hack, essentially uh, sort of convert that string of path into a SQL query and get the sum, right? So if you look at this screenshot here, row number 8, I've got a path of distances, and I've put a plus sign in between each of the distances. So once I have a string like that, I can just easily convert that into an actual SQL expression or a mathematical expression and get the actual sum. So the whole solution is essentially based on that. And if I scroll down and come to the actual final query, this is the entire length of the solution, right? It's just these many lines. You don't need to compile anything in the database at all. You can get the result just by running this one SQL query. Which I thought was really cool. I mean, I never would have imagined in a million years that I could do this in SQL. The first thought that it came to my mind was I'm going to have to build a PL SQL package where I'm going to have to loop through every address and find permutation and combination of all the distances. But yeah, I didn't have to do none of that. So, personally, that's why I find this exciting. And in terms of what the next steps are, right? So, I mean, when I was speaking with Joel, he talked about Oracle Spatial, and he suggested that I should take a look at Spatial. Maybe there are delivered functions that might do this already. And I did read the documentation, and it looks like Oracle Spatial already has maybe some functions that do this. So the next step for me would potentially be to explore those in detail, especially now that Spatial is available in Autonomous DB. I would try to replace this SQL-only solution with some of the Oracle Spatial features and see, does that improve the performance? Am I able to process more distances better with Oracle Spatial? Okay, so again, like I said, I've gone through the solution step by step on the blog post. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout. And the example that I've taken is one where I'm trying to visit all the supermarkets around me so that I can stock up on toilet papers. It's just a fun little thing that I thought was relevant in the current context. Anyway. Now, moving forward, I guess this is what is of more relevance or sort of exciting for the current audience, which is building the actual application using Apex. So to start off, I'm using an always free tier on autonomous ATP instance. So which meant I have literally no cost in hosting that application and using it. And another thing is setting it up itself was easy. So before Autonomous DB was there, if I had to try and host an Apex application, the toughest part always was for me to get a DB running somewhere and hosting it. Now that that's taken care of, it's like I just have no reason not to use Apex for all my application development needs. The second key highlight for me was the Apex, even though it is a low-code platform, it provides a lot of flexibility, right? So what I mean by that is the other low-code platforms that I've tried, they give you drag and drop options, they give you components. And if I want to build something, I have to use those components, right? But if I wanted to do something fancier that is not supported by those components, my hands are kind of tied. I can't, like I'm kind of limited to using only what they offer me. So with Apex, what I've seen through my experience is you do have those components already, which you can make use of. But if you just wanted to, like do your own thing, it was like, yeah, what, I just want to write the entire page myself and still be part of the Apex framework, you can still do that. So here, how I've done is, what I've done are very simple stuff, the classic reports. So all the data, all the list of addresses that you see, all of those are actually just classic reports. I've sort of modified the code to make it look in the way that I want. And then I'm a huge fan of the Redwood theme. So I've just used the Redwood fonts and the color scheme as well in the application. All of it was very easy to do. And another key thing, I mean, another reason that I love Apex is the fact that it's on top of Oracle database, right? Now, Oracle database is something of a beast. It comes with all of these amazing functionalities that you just can't even think of, right? Like I said right now, Oracle Spatial. I didn't even know, I mean, I've heard of Oracle Spatial, but I really did not even know what it does. But then that comes with Oracle database out of the box, right? So one functionality that I love in the Oracle database are REST services, ORTS. So Oracle Apex has obviously built this entire layer on top of that, using which you can easily create your REST services using, click and drag and drop functionalities. So in the RouteBuilder application, I've actually built an endpoint. And the idea is that if somebody wants to make use of RouteBuilder, right, I would give them a URL, and all you have to do is make a call to that URL and pass them the list of addresses, and I will return the optimized route in a JSON format, right? So, I mean, I actually, it was the first time that I was using RESTful services in Apex, and I did not have to refer any documentation. Like when I was building RESTful services, it just asked me, okay, do you want to build a RESTful service? Click here. Do you want to install a sample app so that you can refer to? I said, yeah, sure, why not? So I just, the whole process was maybe a bit too easy. Yeah, so I've got RESTful services going on now. And also, again, you've got data load functionality to build data loaders in Apex and batch jobs. So on the DBMS side, you can schedule jobs using DBMS scheduler. So I've built this administrator functionality, which regularly cleans up old data from my database. So all of this was very easy to do. And obviously integrating with Waze as well, so that the driver can start navigation. Okay. Now, in terms of, if I look at a RouteBuilder, I mean, it's just a side project of mine, right? And what's my, what's the roadmap for the product? So these are some of the things that I'm looking at. So to start with, on the data loader side, I have a requirement to load the addresses as a spreadsheet loader. I'll talk about how that requirement came up as well. So I want a user to load a spreadsheet of addresses, and the application should spit out the optimized route, right? Around REST APIs, I want to add additional features such as access restrictions, monitoring the usage of the API. A lot of this can be done out of the box using Apex. And performance and limits. So today the application has a limit of 10 addresses, and I've added that because of restrictions from Google side, as well as the performance of the SQL query. So I'm going to try and see how I can sort of work around this and improve the performance of the query so that I don't have any limit on the number of addresses that I can accept. Then a couple of additional functionalities. So right now, all the distances are based on driving directions. So I want to give user the option of choosing, let's say, walking, the mode of transport is walking or cycling. So yeah, functionalities like that. Oracle Spatial, I already touched upon. So essentially, I want to simplify the solution by using delivered functionality, which I would confidently assume is much more optimized to get these results. And also it would decrease dependency on another cloud provider as well. So with Oracle Spatial, I think it actually has functionality to give you geocoded details, one of the features. So I want to explore that, and if it does that, then it kind of simplifies things for me. I can, I'm basically using all the features from one space rather than having to have accounts and manage sort of, let's say, vendor relationships with multiple providers, right? And the last thing, I'm calling it clustering. I don't know if that's the right technical term. So essentially, let's say you're a warehouse which has to do thousands of deliveries in a day, right? So at the start of the day, you get access to thousands of addresses. So you don't want to build a route with all of those 1,000 addresses. Instead, you want to cluster them into groups of, let's say, 100 addresses, and each route you would give to a driver, right? And once that cluster is formed, you would then optimize that route. So clustering, I mean, I've heard that term in some places, so that's why I'm sticking to that term as something that I want to add as a functionality. And when I did a quick sort of search, I found that Oracle Data Mining as a product has that feature inbuilt. So I'll try to see if I can access that, with the autonomous database account that I have, and then how to leverage that into the application. So this is the product roadmap that I have. Whenever I get free time, I'll start working on these. Okay, so the last thing is, so I build this application. Now what, right? What can I do? What can I really do with it other than delivering groceries? If I would like, right? I mean, I can try to find use cases for it. So, for example, the logistics industry is the best use case, the most obvious use case. Let's say you are somebody who works with DHL, right, or FedEx, or some company like that, and they want to sort of figure out a way to better optimize their routes. So this is something that you can build for them internally, like if you already have them as a client, right? Or for last mile courier services, all of these things where there's an obvious need for a route optimization. The second use case is kind of interesting. It came through my brother. So he is always looking to invest in property, in the property market. So when I showed him the app, the first thing he asked me was, "Oh, this is actually cool. I have like a spreadsheet of addresses. Can I load that into the application, and then it'll give me the shortest route so that I can do house visits, right?" And that again, like, I thought was an interesting use case. So that's why the spreadsheet loader part of the application is coming in. And building security patrol routes, just trying to come up with ideas that you can use it for, so that if there is a security patrol, you can try to figure out which is the shortest path that covers all the key points that needs to be monitored, so that they get monitored with an increased frequency. Then travel industry. I mean, I say travel industry, but this is more a personal use. So I like doing walking tours when I travel, and I try to do it by myself. So what I do at the moment is try to find out which are the points of interest, and then manually build a Google map to, get me the shortest distance. But now, once the travel restrictions are lifted and we can travel again, I can actually use my own application to help me do this, right? Then a couple of other fun personal applications. So the first one is the example that is in my blog post. It's about toilet paper runs. If you're trying to get to all the supermarkets and get toilet papers, go ahead, use this application. The second one, the London Football Stadium Challenge. So when I used to live in London, a friend of mine and we were trying to come up with this challenge where we would try to visit all the football stadiums in London. London has about 4 or 5 stadiums. Oh, by the way, when I say football, I mean soccer for the American audience. So the idea was I would be cycling to all the stadiums, and he would be taking public transport. So we wanted to see who could cover all the stadiums fastest. So how RouteBuilder would probably help is, you can put in the address of all the stadiums and then choose the mode of transport as cycling, and see how long does it take? Is it realistically possible? Are both of the sort of routes close enough to have an actual challenge? Then the last example, Golden Mile. I don't know if there are any movie fans here, but if you know the movie The World's End, it's a story about how a group of friends meet up in their 40s to do a pub crawl of all the pubs in their hometown in one day. So if they knew, and they kind of run into trouble, but if they knew of RouteBuilder app, probably I think it would have been a good use case for them to use it. So that's it. Some of the applications of RouteBuilder, and I think the key one thing I would like to mention is, let's say you are working in Apex and you already have clients who work in some of these industries. It would be potentially something that you can pitch to them, right? I mean, like I showed you, it's pretty easy to build something like this using with a framework like Apex. So if you already have these kind of relationship with clients in these industries, I would say go for it. Go through the post, figure out how to build it yourself, and then pitch it as a potential project to your clients. All right, I think that's all I had to share. Joel?
Don't worry, Santhosh. We have a ton of questions here. Okay.
Oh, wow.
The one thing I wanted to mention is that Oracle Spatial, somebody mentioned this in the chat as well, that this used to be a for-cost option to the Oracle database. And somebody put a link in there to the announcement that Oracle Spatial was part of every Oracle database at no additional license cost, all editions as well. So on premises, on autonomous database. And I think this would be an interesting next suggestion here, Santhosh, is perhaps we work with the spatial team to figure out how would you solve this, using Oracle Spatial native functionality, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely need to look into that because, like I said, the SQL bit worked, but then, as exciting as that whole process was, it has its limitations. So I think having something that is seeded from Oracle would definitely be a better fit if I want to take this application to the next level. So
Sure.
Definitely will be exploring that.
So before I get into the questions, I did want to ask, how was this application received by your end customer?
Okay, fair enough. Well, it's so let me show that by sharing my screen real quick. So in terms of the first reaction, right? Joel, can you see my screen? Sorry.
No.
Not yet. Okay. Let me. Desktop. Still not?
No, the browser came over a second ago.
Okay. Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
There it is.
So I just want to share this, right? So this was the first reaction that they gave, right? I just sent them an email, send them a link to the app, and and this I sort of say is sort of like the magic thing about Apex, right? The fact that you're able to build something really fast and deliver it to people, for people who don't know Apex, it just blows their mind. It's like, what? You could do that, like, so fast. So in terms of the initial reactions, yes, I think that speaks for itself. Apart from that, in terms of actually using it, I mean, obviously I used it and, they gave it a try. And what has happened now with the organization is a lot of other companies like DoorDash and Lyft and other delivery services, they have volunteered to take over the process for them. So so essentially their need for delivering has come down. And what we help with right now is assembling groceries or sorting groceries and things like that. So
sure.
So essentially, I guess DoorDash's algorithm or Lyft's algorithm is working behind the scenes now.
Okay, I'm going to get into a barrage of questions here, Santhosh. So Anonymous said, right at the outset, I can see that the application is quite zippy. Great work. Can you share the basic infrastructure requirements of your app so people can get an idea how much you get for the resources consumed?
Absolutely. So I'm using the always free tier from Oracle Autonomous DB. So I believe it is 20 GB max, and I don't know the exact specifications, but then in terms of my actual usage, right, how much of the 20 GB that I'm using is very simple. I've got, let's say, one table, right? That's about it, and one procedure, right? It doesn't take that much space at all. So resource usage, I definitely would say that the always free tier itself is enough, right, to get this application running. I'm still on that tier, and I've actually built one or two other applications using the same account, and I'm not even close to using up my free tier. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Karsten asked, why are you using Google Maps and not OpenMap, for example?
Right. The reason is very simple. Google Maps is what I was aware of. So Open Maps is another option. There's another company called Mapbox. So I had a sort of a time constraint, right? So I didn't have time to explore all of these sort of map provider vendors because I wanted a solution right away. So I knew Google Maps, and I kind of knew already that they've got all these APIs. So I went straight ahead with it. But let's say I was actually starting a startup or something like that, then obviously I would explore what are the vendors available out there and make a cost-conscious decision. But in this case, it was just small usage, just went with what made sense for speed.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Eric asked, so autocomplete is auto-populating directly from Google Maps when you showed that example, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So basically what happens behind the scenes is they give you a JavaScript library, which you plug into your Apex page at the top of the Apex page. And you link that sort of JavaScript, and you create an object called autocomplete and link it to your input field. So that's about it. Once that is there, the moment you start typing, sort of events get triggered, and then sort of the page knows that, okay, this field is linked to the Google autocomplete object, so let me start throwing in suggestions into the field. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Pi asked, and I think I can answer this, what Apex version supports the app that Santhosh built integrating with Google Maps? You did this originally on Autonomous Database, which was running Apex 19.2, and the free was recently upgraded to Apex 20.1, but it doesn't seem really dependent upon any Apex version, does it, Santhosh?
Absolutely. So for the Google Maps integration specifically, if that was a question, then absolutely, yeah. I think even Apex 4, etc. would work. There's no real dependency on which version of Apex, right?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. Vera asked, does this work with iOS and Android?
Yeah, so it's not a native mobile application. Essentially, it's just a browser. So what I showed in the video was an actual browser. And that's the cool thing about Apex, right? Even if you're building a browser-based application without really doing any additional sort of designing to it, it ends up looking like a native application when I open it in the phone. So yeah, whichever OS has got a browser, the application works.
Yeah, okay, great. Here's a tough one for you from Jitender. How much time did it take you to build this application?
Oh, that's a very good question. So let me start with the last thing that I did, which was RESTful web services. And I kid you not, it took me less than an hour to build an entire REST service for this. The only thing was, I was stuck with one sort of question. I asked that in a forum, I got the answer. So the REST service, it took me, just about an hour. The rest of the stuff. So I think building the app on Apex was pretty fast. And then I'm just trying to give like a realistic number, right? Because I didn't sit through it end to end. I would probably say under a week, right? Because I had to sort of learn how to use Google Maps, and then also, like come up with this whole SQL thing, which is not something that I knew. I was exploring it. And on top of all of that, I do have a day job, as Joel mentioned. So factoring, even with all of that, I was able to do it in a week because, like I said, that's how much I love Apex, right? It enables me essentially to do things like this.
Yeah, that's impressive that you pulled this off in a week's time. So then I guess just some last questions here. Nelson asked, will you share the source in GitHub? So I provided the link for everybody to run your application, but let's say they wanted to access more. How would they get this?
Right. So I've not really thought about this. So I've actually shared the SQL, which is kind of the most important part. The Apex stuff, sharing the entire thing in GitHub, I'll probably, speak with Joel or somebody who knows how to go about these things to package it correctly and then, put it in a repository. I've personally never gone through an exercise like this, so I don't simply want to copy code and put it there. I want to, do it the right way. So I would definitely consider that, but as of now, I don't have a solid plan on whether I do it or how to go about it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, another question came in from Adika. There's a limit of API calls to the Google Maps before it starts charging your credit card. How much API does it call with your limit of 10 addresses?
Okay. First of all, yes, that is true. So, Google Cloud does, initially it's always free. And, as the number of REST calls increase, you get charged. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to explore the services that Oracle offers. Because if it's already on the database and, you're already on the free tier, then hopefully you won't have to worry about things like that. That being said, how many calls am I making? So, this is actually one of the reasons that I restricted the number of addresses to 10. So if I make it just 10 addresses, I'm able to get the distance matrix information with one call, right? So what I'm doing is I take the 10 addresses and sort of create a sort of a matrix, like a Cartesian join, and make a request to Google Maps. And it sends me essentially 10 into 10, so 100 results, right? So if I want to exceed that, then I'll need to sort of the number of API calls will also increase. So which is why I've put that restriction as of now. Yeah.
Sure. Well, and now that everybody's accessing your app, it might you have to be careful here, Santhosh.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, shut off that credit card quickly here. A couple things. So let's see. Hyphy asks, how did you deal with REST authentication?
So that's something that I've not done yet, which I need to is on the roadmap to add it. So my plan would, first of all, I'll see what is delivered in Apex, and I've already seen in the sample RESTful services, you've got options for creating roles and privileges. So most likely, I'd probably be exploring that. And I also want to give a facility where my REST users can monitor their usage, right? So I would probably build like a sort of a table and show that, okay, this is what you're consuming, things like that. As of now, I don't have experience. Like I said, this is the first time I'm using the REST service. So I do not know exactly what I'll be doing, but this is the general direction I'll be going in.
Sure. Okay. And last question from Zulfikar. How is your page mapped, your page mapped to domain name like you did for RouteBuilder.app?
Okay, good question. I can, if you would like, I can quickly show that.
Sure.
So for the domain, let me just share my screen first. Sorry. This shouldn't take too long. Desktop too. Right. Joel, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So I've registered my domain using Google. So I usually switch between Wix and Google for all my domain needs. So the way to do this is once you register a domain in whichever service you prefer, what I've done is to just forward the address to my app, right? So if I click on manage, yeah. So what this means is whenever somebody types in routebuilder.app, which is the domain that I've registered, the sort of domain registrar will say, okay, instead of trying to, not instead of, go to this particular address, right? And the address that I've given is the home page of the actual application. So in this case, when you use autonomous database, the URL that you have will be something like this, depending on where your data center is, etc. And the rest of it, I guess everyone is familiar with, right? The page number and the application ID. So you just need to put this in the forwarding section. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, Santhosh. Oh, and just so you know, in Apex 20.1, you can now use these SEO-friendly URLs too. So you don't have to use F question mark.
Yes. I mean, I did read that, so I'll probably explore and get that implemented as well.
Yeah. I think that's it. One last one here, because we have just 1 minute. I see that the UI is in Redwood theme. Is this theme available in the latest Apex version?
Probably Joel, you can answer that. I just did it manually, so.
Yeah, I don't think that's available for customer applications. I don't believe yet, right? You might have gotten that internally, Santhosh. So anonymous attendee, I don't think that's available yet.
Yes, and how I did that is very simple and straightforward. So the key components that I were looking for is the font and the background and the color scheme, right? So for the fonts, I uploaded the Oracle fonts as static application files. You need to do a conversion into a web font type. And then, I just made use of those fonts in all my classes. And for the background image, it's straightforward. You just replace the background of your pages. Yeah. So if anybody wants to know how to do the fonts part, because that I had to do some Googling to figure out, I can probably put up a blog post on how I did that.
And last question here. I know it's top of the hour. I want to let people go. If people have other questions, how should they get hold of you? Should they get hold of you on LinkedIn or on your blog or on Twitter, or what would you prefer?
I guess Twitter or the blog, either would do. I guess Twitter would be easier for me to communicate because that's, I get notifications and stuff. I can get back to you quicker. So my Twitter handle is Santhosh Jose, S-A-N-T. I'll just type it into the...
And I think it's linked off of your blog as well. And I put a link to your
right.
Your
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Santhosh, this was excellent. I mean, thanks for really all your work in preparing this today. And I really wanted to thank everyone as well for joining us for today's office hours. Just as a reminder, I hope everyone joins us again on August 20th for the top 12 new features in Apex 20.1 that everyone should know. I thought this was outstanding, Santhosh. I wish you, Santhosh, and I wish all of our attendees a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Cheers.